The obsidian floors of the imperial throne room glittered like a sea of black glass, reflecting the cold blue light that emanated from floating crystal shards overhead. Grant stood at the center of this vast chamber, his knees weak, not from the journey through the palace's endless corridors, but from the weight of his circumstances. Two imperial guards flanked him, their faceplates emotionless under the crystalline glow, plasma weapons humming softly against his back. Before him, seated upon a throne carved from what appeared to be a single piece of translucent blue crystal, was Emperor Valon. The Emperor's skin held the faintest blue tint, his silver hair cascading down shoulders adorned with ceremonial armor that seemed both ancient and impossibly advanced. His eyes, pupilless orbs of swirling cobalt, fixed on Grant with the intensity of twin suns. "So this is the leader of the new Terra resistance." Emperor Valon's voice echoed throughout the chamber, each word measured and deliberate. The human who thought his primitive weapons could stand against an obsidian fleet. Grant swallowed hard, but kept his spine straight. He was no longer just Grant Chen, the farmer who knew too much about heirloom plants and soil composition. The resistance had changed him, hardened him. The fall of New Terra had completed that transformation. "I came to negotiate the release of my people," Grant said, his voice steadier than he'd expected. "They're civilians, most of them. Farmers, teachers, children." A thin smile spread across Emperor Valon's face. "Negotiate? You have nothing to offer. Terran, your colony is razed, your ships captured, your weapons confiscated." "I have knowledge," Grant countered. "Knowledge your empire needs desperately right now." The throne room fell silent. Even the guards seemed to still their breathing. "Explain yourself," the Emperor commanded, leaning forward slightly, the first sign of genuine interest. "Your daughter, the Princess Leix, she's dying," Grant said bluntly. "Your physicians can't determine why. But I know. She's being poisoned with plant alkaloids, a form of biowarfare that's undetectable to your advanced scanning technology." The silence that followed was shattered by a harsh laugh from a tall, rail-thin alien who stepped forward from the shadows beside the throne. His skin was ash-gray, stretched tight over a skeletal frame, and the medical insignia on his formal robes marked him as a high-ranking physician. "Absurd," the alien physician sneered. "Our medical scanners can detect compounds at the molecular level. Nothing is invisible to imperial medicine." "Not true, Dr. Morvich," Grant replied, emphasizing the title with undisguised contempt. "Natural alkaloids masked within native plant compounds can evade detection when they're engineered correctly. The princess shows all the classic symptoms: trembling hands, yellowing skin, irregular breathing patterns. I've seen this before." Emperor Valon's eyes narrowed. "And how would a Terran farmer know anything of imperial medicine or my daughter's condition?" "Because this isn't just any poisoning. It's a specific type we've encountered on agricultural colonies. Whoever is targeting her is using modified orchid alkaloids, probably derived from species native to the Centauri systems." Dr. Morvich's laughter died in his throat, replaced by a scowl. "This is preposterous. The princess is suffering from a rare genetic condition that conveniently appeared 3 months ago," Grant interrupted. "Test her for alkaloid binding in her peripheral nerve tissue. You won't find it with standard scans. You'll need to use chromatography on a tissue sample." The Emperor raised a hand, silencing Morvich before he could retort. "And if what you say is true, Terran, what do you propose?" "I can help her," Grant said simply. "I know which earth plants contain the enzymes that can neutralize these toxins. Give me access to a growing facility, seeds from my confiscated ship, and I can create an antidote." "And in exchange?" The Emperor's voice was dangerously soft. "The safety of my people, their immediate release and safe transport to any neutral colony world of their choosing." Emperor Valon studied Grant for a long moment, his alien features unreadable. Finally, he spoke. You have 48 hours to demonstrate progress. If my daughter shows improvement, your people will remain unharmed. If she dies..." He let the threat hang in the air, unfinished but unmistakable. An elderly counselor with skin so pale it was nearly translucent stepped forward, bowing deeply. "Your Imperial Majesty, there is the matter of the law of binding debt to consider." Grant noticed how the Emperor's jaw tightened. "Explain to our guest, Counselor Eldritch." The ancient advisor turned to Grant, his milky eyes somehow both blind and all-seeing. "By imperial law, any being who saves the life of a royal family member becomes bound to the crown through the law of binding debt. Should you save Princess Leix, you would become her royal consort, bound to the imperial family for life." Grant felt as though the obsidian floor had dropped away beneath him. "Consort? As in..." "As in marriage," Emperor Valon confirmed coldly. "An ancient law, but one we cannot circumvent. So consider carefully, Terran, your freedom for my daughter's life." The choice was impossible. Remain a prisoner of the Empire forever, or let the princess die and condemn his people to death. Grant took a deep breath, the weight of thousands of lives pressing down on his shoulders. "I'll save her," he said finally. "Whatever it takes." The Emperor nodded once, then gestured to the guards. "Take him to the royal biodome. Give him what he needs, and watch him closely." As Grant was led away, he caught a glimpse of Dr. Morvich's face, a mixture of fury and calculation that sent a chill down his spine. He had just made a powerful enemy in the imperial court, but right now, that was the least of his problems. The royal biodome sprawled beneath a massive crystalline dome, a contained ecosystem that housed thousands of alien plant species from across the empire. As Grant was escorted through its winding paths, he marveled despite himself at the exotic flora, luminescent fungi that pulsed with gentle blue light, floating lily-like plants that hovered inches above artificial ponds, trees with bark that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. Captain Thien, a heavily armored guard with mottled green skin and 4 piercing yellow eyes, watched Grant's every move with obvious suspicion. "This area has been cleared for your work," he announced, gesturing to a section of the biodome that had been partitioned off. "The seeds from your ship have been delivered, along with the equipment you requested." Grant surveyed the space. It was smaller than he'd hoped, but workable. Several containers held Earth soil, though he could tell immediately it had been sterilized and processed to the point of near uselessness. Advanced growing lights hung overhead, and a sophisticated irrigation system lined the perimeter. "The soil's wrong," Grant said, crouching to run his fingers through the lifeless dirt. "It's too alkaline and lacks the microbial ecosystem Earth plants need." "Our scientists assured us it meets Terran specifications," Captain Thene replied stiffly. "Your scientists have never grown Earth plants," Grant countered. "I'll need raw soil samples from at least 3 different environments in the biodome, plus access to compost material." Than's upper eyes narrowed, while his lower pair blinked rapidly, a sign of annoyance. Grant guessed. "You will be given what is necessary and nothing more. Dr. Morv has made it clear that you are to be granted minimal resources." "Dr. Morvick wants me to fail," Grant said bluntly. "But the Emperor wants his daughter to live. Which priority do you serve, Captain?" The 4-eyed guard stared at him for a long moment before activating his communication device. After a brief, terse conversation in the clicking Imperial language, he turned back to Grant. "You will have your soil samples, but every seed, every plant you grow will be cataloged and monitored. If you attempt to cultivate anything that could be used as a weapon or intoxicant..." "I'm trying to save a life, not start a drug operation," Grant cut in. "Now, I need to see the princess. I have to assess her current symptoms to know which plants to prioritize." Then seemed about to refuse, then received another communication. His posture stiffened further. The princess is on her way here. Apparently, she insisted. Grant was still setting up his growing stations when he felt a shift in the atmosphere of the biodome. The guards stationed around the perimeter straightened, and even the air seemed to grow still. He turned to see a small procession entering through the main doors. Princess Leix was not what he had expected. Rather than the imposing figure her father cut, she appeared delicate, almost fragile. Her skin was a pale blue, like the sky of Earth just before dawn, and her silver-white hair was pulled back in an intricate arrangement that seemed too heavy for her slender neck to support. She wore flowing robes of iridescent fabric that shifted between blue and violet with each careful step. But what struck Grant most were her eyes, large, luminous, and filled with an intelligence that belied her obvious physical weakness. Her hands trembled visibly as she approached, confirming Grant's suspicions about the alkaloid poisoning. Two handmaidens flanked her, ready to catch her should her strength fail. But the princess waved them back as she reached Grant's workstation. "So you're the Terran who claims he can heal me when all the Empire's medical science has failed," she said. Her voice was soft but clear, with a musical quality to the Imperial common language that Grant hadn't heard before. Grant bowed awkwardly, unsure of the proper protocol. "I don't claim anything, Your Highness. I only know that your symptoms match a specific type of poisoning I've encountered before." "Poisoning," she repeated, the word hanging in the air between them. "You believe someone is trying to kill me?" "I know they are," Grant replied, forgetting protocol in his certainty. "The question is who and why." The princess studied him, her head tilting slightly. "Dr. Morvch says you're a charlatan, that you're buying time to save your people with false promises." "Dr. Morvich is either incompetent or complicit," Grant said bluntly, then immediately regretted his candor when he saw Captain Theeney's hand move to his weapon. But to his surprise, Princess Leix smiled, a small, tired gesture that nonetheless transformed her face. "You speak your mind. That's rare in the Imperial Court." "I'm not part of your court," Grant reminded her. "And we don't have time for political niceties. I need to examine you, take samples, understand exactly how the toxin is affecting your system." The princess nodded and extended her arm. "What do you need?" Over the next hour, Grant conducted basic tests using a mixture of Imperial technology and his own knowledge. He noted the pattern of her tremors, most pronounced after meals, a classic sign of cumulative alkaloid toxicity. He examined her eyes, where the faintest yellow tinge confirmed his suspicions. Most telling was her breathing, regular for minutes at a time, then suddenly interrupted by a sequence of rapid, shallow breaths before normalizing again. "It's definitely alkaloid poisoning," he confirmed as he recorded his findings. "Specifically, a compound similar to those found in certain Earth orchids, but modified to act slowly, building up in your system over time." "Can you counter it?" she asked, watching as he sorted through his seed collection. "I believe so. We need to create an enzyme inhibitor using compounds from willow bark, echinacea flowers, and xanther fern, a rare species from New Terra that I fortunately included in my collection." As he worked, explaining each step to the increasingly interested princess, Grant became aware of Dr. Morvich hovering at the edge of the workspace. His skeletal features twisted in a permanent expression of disdain. "This is primitive herbalism," the physician finally interjected. "Your Highness, I must insist that you return to the medical wing for proper treatment." "The proper treatment has done nothing for 3 months," Leix replied, a hint of steel entering her voice. "I will remain here and observe the Terran's methods." Morvich's jaw tightened, but he bowed stiffly. "As you wish, but I will be monitoring every compound he administers to ensure your safety." As the doctor retreated, Grant leaned closer to the princess. "He's right to be cautious. But there's something else happening here. The toxin in your system isn't naturally occurring. Someone engineered it specifically to evade Imperial detection methods. "You believe there's a conspiracy against me?" Leax asked, her voice low. "I know there is," Grant replied, carefully measuring soil into the growing containers. "The question is, how far it reaches, and who stands to gain from your death." The princess was silent for a moment, watching as Grant planted the first seeds. "My sister Kestra would be next in line for the throne," she said finally. "But she has always been loyal to our father and to me." Grant noted the information without comment, focusing instead on adjusting the biodome's lighting system to better mimic Earth's solar spectrum. "These first seedlings should sprout within 24 hours, he explained. "Once they reach sufficient maturity, I can begin extracting the compounds we need. In the meantime, I recommend you avoid eating or drinking anything that hasn't been tested first by someone you trust implicitly." "You believe I'm being poisoned through my food?" "It's the most likely vector," Grant confirmed. "Alkaloids this specific wouldn't be administered through air or water. Too diffuse. It has to be targeted directly to you." As the princess prepared to leave, she paused, studying Grant with those unsettlingly intelligent eyes. "Why are you doing this? You could have let me die and found another way to negotiate for your people." Grant looked up from his work, meeting her gaze directly. "Because I'm tired of death. I've seen enough of it on New Terra. If I can save one life, even an Imperial one, maybe it balances the scales a little." Leax nodded slowly. "We are not all monsters, you know. Some of us oppose the action against your colony." "But not enough of you," Grant replied, turning back to his seedlings. The princess left without another word, her handmaidens closing ranks around her as she exited the biodome. Captain Thien remained, his 4 eyes tracking Grant's every movement. "She likes you," the guard observed unexpectedly. "That could be dangerous for both of you." Grant didn't look up. "I'm just trying to keep her alive." "In the Imperial Court, staying alive is never simple," Thien replied. "Remember that, Terran." The first 3 days passed in a blur of intensive work. Grant spent every waking hour in the biodome, carefully tending to the rapidly growing plants. Imperial agricultural technology, he had to admit, was impressive. Systems that accelerated growth while maintaining the plant's essential properties allowed him to achieve in days what would have taken weeks on Earth. Princess Leax visited daily, sometimes remaining for hours to observe and ask questions. Her curiosity seemed genuine, her intelligence sharp despite her worsening condition. Her tremors had increased, and twice she had nearly collapsed during her visits, saved only by the quick reflexes of her handmaidens. On the morning of the 4th day, Grant completed his first extract, a pale green liquid derived from willow bark and echinacea roots, combined with compounds from the still immature xanther fern. He had just finished the final filtration when Dr. Morvik arrived, accompanied by a contingent of Imperial guards. "The Emperor demands a progress report," Morvik announced, his tone making clear his expectation of failure. "Perfect timing," Grant replied, holding up the vial of green liquid. "The first treatment is ready." Morvik's eyes narrowed. "You expect us to administer that concoction to the Imperial Princess without proper testing? Absurd." "We don't have time for your standard protocols," Grant countered. "The princess's condition is deteriorating rapidly. This initial dose won't cure her, but it should begin to inhibit the alkaloid's effects and give us more time." Before Morvik could respond, Princess Leax entered the biodome, her step faltering visibly. Her skin had taken on a concerning yellow tinge, and her breathing came in short, irregular gasps. "Is it ready?" she asked, her gaze fixed on the vial in Grant's hand. "It is, Your Highness, but—" "I will take it now," she interrupted, extending a trembling hand. Dr. Morvik stepped between them. "Your Highness, I must strongly advise against this. We have no idea what effect this primitive remedy might have on your system." And your advanced treatments have done what exactly, Doctor? The princess challenged, her voice weak but determined. I grow worse by the day. I can feel the poison spreading. Grant moved around Morvish, careful to keep his movement slow and non-threatening under the watchful eyes of the guards. This will taste bitter, he warned, handing the vial to Lex. It needs to be taken all at once. The princess nodded, and, without hesitation, drained the vial in a single swallow. She grimaced at the taste but kept the liquid down. It will take at least an hour to show any effect, Grant explained. And this is just the beginning of the treatment. We'll need more concentrated doses as we progress. Dr. Morv made a sound of disgust. If the princess survives this first administration, you mean... When I survive it, Lex corrected, handing the empty vial back to Grant. Her fingers brushed against his. The contact brief, but deliberate. I have faith in our Terran healer. The next hours were tense. Grant continued his work while Lex rested in a specially prepared chamber adjacent to the biodome, monitored closely by both Imperial physicians and Grant's own makeshift diagnostic equipment. 6 hours after taking the extract, the first positive signs appeared. Her tremors reduced by approximately 10%, and her breathing patterns stabilized slightly. When Grant reported this improvement to the waiting Emperor Valon, the monarch's relief was palpable, even through his carefully maintained facade of imperial dignity. Continue your work, the Emperor commanded. Whatever resources you require will be provided. As Valon departed, Grant became aware of the growing division among the imperial courtiers who had accompanied their ruler. Some looked at Grant with newfound respect, even hope. Others, clustered around Dr. Morvich, watched him with undisguised hostility. You've bought yourself more time, Terran, Morvich said quietly, as he passed Grant on his way out. But the princess is far from cured, and you've made powerful enemies today. Grant ignored the threat, focusing instead on the next phase of treatment. The xanther fern was developing well, but he needed it to mature fully before he could extract the most potent compounds. Every hour counted now. That evening, as the biodome's lighting systems dimmed to simulate night, Grant was surprised when Princess Lex returned, accompanied only by Captain Thun, rather than her usual entourage. You should be resting, Grant said, setting aside the growth charts he'd been studying. I rest enough, she replied, moving to sit beside him at the workstation. Her movements were steadier than before, though still far from normal. I wanted to thank you properly, away from the court's prying eyes and ears. Grant glanced at Captain Thun, who had taken up position at a discreet distance. He's loyal to me, not to the factions, Lex explained, following Grant's gaze. We can speak freely. Your condition has improved, but you're still in danger, Grant said bluntly. The poison continues to accumulate in your system. We need stronger extracts. And soon. Lex nodded. I know, but that's not the only danger, is it? You've made enemies by helping me. I made enemies the moment I led the resistance on New Terra, Grant replied with a shrug. One more doesn't concern me. It should, the princess said softly. Dr. Morvich has considerable influence, and he's not working alone. Grant paused in his work, studying the princess's face. You suspect your sister, don't you, Kestra? Leax's expression revealed nothing, but her silence was answer enough. Alkaloid poisoning is subtle, difficult to detect, Grant continued. Whoever orchestrated this has patience, resources, and intimate access to your daily life. That narrows the possibilities considerably. Accusations against a royal family member without absolute proof would be dangerous, Lex warned. I'm not here to play imperial politics, Grant assured her. I'm here to heal you and secure the safety of my people. Nothing more. The princess's luminous eyes studied him with unnerving intensity. If you succeed, have you considered what the law of binding debt will mean for you? what becoming royal consort would entail. Grant had been deliberately avoiding that particular reality. One problem at a time, Your Highness. First, we get the poison out of your system. Then we worry about ancient laws. A small smile touched Liex's lips. You truly are unlike anyone in the imperial court, Grant of New Terra. As she spoke his name for the first time, Grant felt an unexpected warmth spread through his chest. He quickly redirected his attention to the seedlings before him, uncomfortable with the sensation. These should be ready for the next extraction by morning, he said, changing the subject. With your permission, I'd like to take another blood sample to measure the alkaloid levels. Liex extended her arm without hesitation. As Grant carefully drew a small amount of her bluish blood, she asked, Do you think there might be something in my genetic makeup that's helping me resist the poison? I've survived much longer than would be expected, according to your initial assessment. Grant considered this as he sealed the blood sample. It's possible. Your species' metabolism differs from humans in several key ways. If we could identify a natural resistance factor in your blood, we might be able to amplify it. Then let's investigate that avenue as well, Liex suggested. I've instructed Captain Thane to grant you access to my personal medical records. They may contain information that Dr. Morvich has been withholding. Grant raised an eyebrow. That's a significant level of trust, Your Highness. You've earned it, she replied simply, rising to leave. At the entrance to the biodome, she paused and looked back. And Grant? When we're alone, please call me Liex. After she departed, Captain Thun approached, his expression unreadable. She favors you, he observed. That makes you a target. I've been a target since I arrived, Grant replied, turning back to his plants. Not like this, Thane insisted. The princess's favor changes everything. Watch your back. Terran. The court vipers strike without warning. Grant soon discovered the truth of Thane's warning. The next morning, he arrived at the biodome to find devastation. Someone had entered during the night and destroyed most of his carefully cultivated plants. The willow saplings had been torn from their containers, the echinacea crushed, and worst of all, the precious xanther fern had been reduced to ashes. As Grant surveyed the destruction, his heart sinking, Emperor Valon himself arrived, accompanied by Princess Liex and a full contingent of Imperial guards. The Emperor's face was a mask of cold fury. Explain this, he demanded, gesturing at the ruined plants. Sabotage, Grant replied simply. Someone doesn't want the princess to recover. Or perhaps you sought to extend your usefulness by destroying your own work, suggested Dr. Morvich, who had materialized at the Emperor's side. A clever strategy to buy more time while your fellow Terrans plot escape. Grant ignored the accusation, instead addressing the Emperor directly. I can restore the garden, but it will take time. Time the princess may not have. The first treatment has helped, but without follow-up doses, the toxin will continue to accumulate. Emperor Valon's gaze shifted between Grant and Morvich, clearly weighing their competing narratives. Finally, he turned to his daughter. What say you, Liex? You've spent more time with the Terran than any of us. He speaks the truth. Father, Liex replied without hesitation. The destruction occurred after midnight, when Grant was confined to his quarters under guard. Security records will confirm this. A flicker of uncertainty crossed Morvich's skeletal features before he composed himself. Perhaps accomplices. Then, the Terran resistance is known for its resourcefulness. Enough, the Emperor commanded, raising a hand. I care not for accusations without proof. What matters is my daughter's life. He turned to Grant. What do you need to rebuild? Access to the main seed vault, Grant replied immediately. I had limited backup samples, but not enough, and I need additional security measures here in the biodome. Continuous surveillance and trusted guards. Granted, the Emperor decided. Captain Thun will personally oversee your security from this moment forward. Dr. Morvich, you will provide all necessary medical support and access. Morvich bowed stiffly. As your Imperial Majesty commands. As the Emperor and his entourage departed, Grant began the painstaking process of salvaging what little remained of his work. Liax stayed behind, insisting on helping despite her weakened condition. You shouldn't strain yourself, Grant protested, as she carefully separated seedlings that might be saved. I refuse to be a passive victim, she replied, her jaw set with determination. This is my life at stake, and I will fight for it. Working together, they managed to rescue enough plant material to continue the treatment, albeit at a reduced potency. By nightfall, Grant had prepared another dose of the extract, this one supplemented with the few xanther fern leaves that had survived the attack. This won't be as effective as I'd hoped, he warned, as Liax took the vial. But it should maintain the improvements from the first dose while we rebuild the garden. The princess nodded, downing the liquid without complaint. How much time do we have, truly? She asked afterward, her voice steady despite the gravity of the question. Grant hesitated, then decided she deserved honesty. At the current rate of toxicity, and with the setback to our treatment plan, 3 days, maybe 4, before permanent organ damage begins. Liax absorbed this without visible reaction. Then, we work faster. I've arranged for samples from the Royal Seed Vault to be delivered tonight, and I've requested additional growing equipment that should accelerate plant development. Why are you helping me so directly? Grant asked, puzzled by her involvement. Surely an imperial princess has more important matters to attend to than plant cultivation. A smile touched Liax's lips. Perhaps I enjoy your company, Grant of New Terra. You speak to me as a person, not as an untouchable royal icon or a political asset. Before Grant could respond, Captain Thini entered the biodome, approaching with uncharacteristic urgency. Your Highness, Terran, we have a situation. Security has detained an intruder attempting to access this facility, a member of Princess Kestra's personal guard. Liax's expression hardened. Bring them to my father immediately. Already done, Your Highness. The Emperor requests your presence. And the Terrans. The throne room was tense when they arrived. Emperor Valon sat rigidly on his crystal throne, while to his right stood Princess Kestra, tall, regal, with the same blue-tinted skin as her sister, but sharper features and eyes that held none of Liax's warmth. Before the throne knelt a massive, armored figure, the captured guard. Ah, sister, Kestra called as Liax entered, her voice honeyed with false concern. I was just explaining to father how shocked I am that one of my guards would act so rashly, attempting to verify the Terran's work without proper authorization. Verify or sabotage, Liax challenged, taking her place to the left of their father. Kestra's smile never wavered. Why would I wish harm upon my beloved sister? I merely worry that you place too much trust in primitive Terran remedies when our own advanced medicine offers solutions. Solutions that have failed for 3 months, Liax countered. Emperor Valon raised a hand, silencing both daughters. Captain Then, what evidence do you have of this guard's intentions? Then stepped forward, presenting a small device. This was found on his person, Your Imperial Majesty. It's a molecular disruptor, designed to accelerate the decomposition of organic matter, not a tool for verification. Kestra's smile finally faltered. Varkas is overenthusiastic in his duties. Nothing more. If he brought inappropriate equipment, he did so without my knowledge or consent. The kneeling guard, Varkas, remained silent, his head bowed. Emperor Valon's gaze moved to Grant, who had been observing the exchange carefully. You have been silent, Terran. What say you of this matter? Grant considered his words carefully, aware of the political minefield he was navigating. I say that Princess Liax improves with each treatment, despite setbacks. I say that someone powerful wants to prevent her recovery. And I say that alkaloid poisoning of this specific type requires extensive botanical knowledge, access to rare compounds, and intimate familiarity with the princess's daily routine. "You dare accuse a member of the imperial family?" Kestra hissed, her composure cracking. "I accuse no one directly," Grant replied calmly. "I merely state facts. Your Majesty can draw his own conclusions." Emperor Valon studied his younger daughter with new wariness. "Kestra, you will confine yourself to your quarters until this matter is fully investigated. Your guards will be reassigned temporarily." "Father, this is outrageous. You would take the word of a Terran prisoner over your own daughter?" "I take the evidence before me," the Emperor replied coldly. "Now go, before I reconsider my leniency." As Kestra departed, her face a mask of barely contained fury, Grant caught a glimpse of Dr. Morvick watching from the shadows, his expression unreadable. The following days were a race against time. Grant worked tirelessly to rebuild his garden, using the resources now flowing freely from the Imperial Seed Vault. Princess Liax continued to assist whenever her strength allowed, and together they established a new treatment regimen that showed promising results. Her tremors reduced by nearly 30%, and her breathing patterns stabilized further. But Dr. Morvich's assessment, delivered reluctantly to the Emperor, confirmed Grant's worst fears. The princess would need continuous enzyme inhibitor treatments to maintain her improvement. The toxin had accumulated in her system for too long to be eliminated by a single course of treatment. "We need to identify and enhance the natural resistance factors in her blood," Grant explained to Captain Thun as they reviewed the princess's latest test results. "If we can isolate the specific enzymes that have allowed her to survive this long, we might be able to amplify them enough to create permanent immunity." "And if you can't?" Finney asked bluntly. Grant didn't answer. They both knew what failure meant. Late that evening, as Grant was preparing to return to his guarded quarters, Princess Liax arrived unexpectedly. She dismissed her handmaidens with a gesture and approached Grant's workstation alone. "I have news," she said without preamble. "Father has placed Kestra under house arrest. Evidence was found linking her to the alkaloid compound in my system." "That's good news," Grant replied cautiously, noting the troubled expression on Liax's face. "Isn't it?" "It should be," she agreed, absently touching one of the newly sprouted willow saplings. "But Kestra has many supporters in the court. Some already whisper that Father acts irrationally out of fear for my life, that the evidence was planted." "Politics," Grant said with distaste. "Even when your life is at stake, the power games continue." Liax smiled faintly. "It is the way of empires. I'm afraid." She hesitated, then asked quietly, "If you succeed in saving me, what will become of you, Grant? Have you thought about what the law of binding debt will mean?" Grant had been avoiding that particular reality. "I assume I'll become some kind of ceremonial figure, a token consort with no real authority." "No," Liax corrected gently. "The royal consort holds significant power, equal to the royal spouse in many respects. You would be expected to participate in governance, to help shape imperial policy." She paused, studying his reaction. "Your life would never be your own again." The full weight of his situation struck Grant anew. In saving Liax, he would be trading his freedom for a gilded cage, forever bound to an empire he had once fought against. "I made my choice when I agreed to help you," he said finally. "My people's safety comes first. My own future is secondary." Liax stepped closer, her luminous eyes searching his face. "And if there were more to it than duty? If the consort and the royal spouse were to find common ground? Perhaps even connection?" Grant felt his pulse quicken as she reached out, her slender blue fingers lightly touching his arm. "Liax, The moment was shattered by an alarm blaring throughout the biodome. Red emergency lights flashed, and Captain Thiene burst through the entrance, weapon drawn. "Security breach!" he shouted. "Multiple intruders, armed and approaching fast!" Grant reacted instinctively, grabbing the most crucial plant samples and stuffing them into a portable container. "We need to protect the garden," he told Liix, who had already moved to secure other vital specimens. "No time," Thiene countered, positioning himself between them and the entrance. "They're targeting you both. We must evacuate to the secure royal chambers immediately." As if to emphasize his point, a plasma bolt sizzled through the air, striking one of the growing stations and reducing it to smoking ruins. Grant caught a glimpse of armored figures moving through the outer biodome section, their weapons raised. Kestra's loyalists, Liix realized, her voice tight with anger. "She's making her move." Thiene led them through a concealed exit at the rear of the biodome, into a network of service corridors that wound through the palace depths. Behind them, explosions and weapons fire indicated that the Imperial Guards were engaging the intruders. "They won't find us here," Thiene assured them as they hurried through the dimly lit passages. "These routes are known only to the most trusted royal guards." Grant clutched the container of plant samples to his chest, his mind racing. "We need to get to a secure location where I can continue the treatment. The princess can't afford any interruption in the enzyme therapy." "The royal medical suite has been compromised," Thiene informed them grimly. "Dr. Morvich appears to have sided openly with Princess Kestra. Half the medical staff went with him." "Of course," Liix murmured. Her breathing labored from the exertion of their flight. "He was part of it all along." They emerged from the service corridors into a heavily fortified section of the palace that Grant hadn't seen before. Guards with the Emperor's personal insignia stood at attention, admitting them without question to a suite of rooms that combined luxury with obvious security measures. Emperor Valon himself was waiting, his normally composed features tight with barely controlled rage. "Kestra has shown her hand," he said as soon as they entered. "Her forces have seized the western quadrant of the palace, and she has declared me unfit to rule." "Father, I'm so sorry," Liix began, but the Emperor waved away her words. "You have nothing to apologize for, daughter. The treachery is Kestra's alone." He turned to Grant. "Terran, can you continue your treatment here? I've had equipment brought from the secondary medical facility." Grant surveyed the hastily assembled laboratory setup. "It's not ideal, but it will work. The most important thing is that I saved these," he said, opening the container to reveal the precious plant samples. "With these, I can create more extract and continue Liix's treatment." As Grant set to work, Emperor Valon drew his daughter aside for a private conversation. Captain Thiene stationed himself at the laboratory entrance, alert for any threat. Hours passed as Grant painstakingly processed the plant materials, extracting the vital compounds and combining them in precise proportions. Finally, he produced a vial of emerald liquid more concentrated than any previous dose. "This should counteract the worst effects of the poison," he explained, as Liix approached to receive the treatment. "But we're still treating symptoms, not the cause. To truly cure you, we need to develop a way to flush the accumulated toxins from your system and prevent new absorption." Liix took the vial, her fingers brushing against his, as she had done before. Deliberately, he now realized, "You've done more than anyone thought possible. Grant, whatever happens next, know that you have my eternal gratitude." As she drank the extract, Emperor Valon returned, his expression grave. "The situation deteriorates. Kestra has rallied significant support among the military leadership. She claims that Liix's illness proves she is unfit to be heir, and that my judgment is compromised by my concern for her." "What will you do?" Grant asked, already knowing that imperial politics rarely ended peacefully. "There is one option," the Emperor said slowly. "An ancient tradition that even Kestra would not dare to challenge openly. The trial of champions." Liix looked up sharply. Father, no, it's barbaric. What is this trial? Grant asked, glancing between them. Captain Thin answered from his position by the door. When succession is disputed, each claimant may select a champion to fight on their behalf. The victor's patron becomes undisputed heir to the throne. Combat to the death, Liax added quietly. In the Imperial Colosseum, before the entire court and broadcast throughout the Empire. Grant felt a chill run down his spine. And who would be your champion? The room fell silent as 3 pairs of eyes turned to him. No, he said immediately, understanding dawning. I'm a farmer, not a warrior. I wouldn't last 10 seconds against a trained Imperial fighter. Under the law of binding debt, you are already bound to Princess Liax as her future consort, Emperor Valan explained. According to tradition, the royal consort must defend the royal spouse's honor and right to rule. But we're not even married yet, Grant protested. In the eyes of imperial law, the bond was formed the moment you accepted the responsibility of saving her life, the emperor countered. The formal ceremony is a mere formality. Grant looked to Liax, hoping for support, but her expression was resigned. I would not ask this of you if there were any alternative, she said softly. But Kestra has named her champion already, Varkas, her personal guard. He has killed dozens in similar contests. Then find someone else, Grant insisted. Someone with actual combat experience. We cannot, Emperor Valan said flatly. The law is absolute on this point. The consort must fight, or the claim is forfeit. Grant ran a hand through his hair, pacing the small laboratory. This is insane. I came here to heal, not to fight. I'm no match for a professional killer. Then, I will die either way, Liax said quietly. Either from the poison that continues to weaken me, or from Kestra's rule once she takes the throne. And your people, the colonists of New Terra, will have no protection from her vengeance. The weight of responsibility pressed down on Grant's shoulders once more. Everything he had worked for, his people's safety, Liax's recovery, even the fragile peace he had begun to envision, all hung in the balance. How long do I have to prepare? He asked finally, his voice hollow. The trial is set for tomorrow at midday, Emperor Valan replied. Captain Thene will train you in the basics of Imperial combat techniques. It is little enough. I know. Little enough, Grant echoed bitterly. Against a seasoned killer. That night, in a small training room adjacent to the royal chambers, Captain Thene put Grant through a crash course in Imperial combat. The four-eyed guard was a demanding teacher, pushing Grant to his limits and beyond. Your only advantage is your size, Thene explained, as he demonstrated basic defensive stances. Varkas is twice your mass, heavily armored, and trained since birth for combat. But he's also slower, less agile. You must use that. Grant tried to focus as Thane placed a training weapon in his hands, a practice version of the plasma blade that Imperial warriors favored. It felt awkward, unwieldy compared to the simple tools he was accustomed to. I'm going to die tomorrow, aren't I? He asked bluntly, as Thane corrected his grip for the third time. The guard's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture Grant had come to recognize as thoughtfulness. Perhaps, but perhaps not. Varkas relies on strength and intimidation. He has never faced someone with nothing to lose and everything to gain. That's not as reassuring as you might think, Grant replied dryly. They continued training deep into the night until Grant's muscles screamed with fatigue, and his hands were blistered from the practice weapon. Finally, Thene called a halt. Rest now, the guard advised. Tomorrow will come soon enough. As Grant prepared to retire to his assigned quarters, he was surprised to find Princess Liax waiting in the corridor outside the training room. The latest treatment had restored some color to her face, but she still moved with careful deliberation, conserving her strength. Walk with me, she requested, offering her arm in a reversal of court protocol that would have scandalized the imperial nobility. Grant hesitated. then accepted, allowing her to lead him to a small balcony overlooking the palace gardens far below. The night sky above was awash with stars and the silhouettes of orbital structures, reminders of the vast empire that surrounded them. "I never thanked you properly," Liax said after a moment of silence. "Not just for healing me, but for showing me a different way of seeing the world. Your knowledge of plants, your connection to growing things. It's so different from anything in the imperial court." "It's just farming," Grant replied, though he was touched by her words. "Something humans have done for thousands of years." "But it's more than that," she insisted. "It's understanding life, nurturing it, finding balance. The Empire has forgotten such things in its pursuit of expansion and technology." She turned to face him directly. "If you survive tomorrow, when you survive tomorrow, I want you to teach us these things. Help me create a different kind of empire." Grant studied her face in the starlight, seeing genuine passion behind her words. "You truly believe you can change an empire built on conquest and hierarchy?" "I believe we can," she corrected. "Together." The word hung between them, laden with meaning beyond its simple syllables. Grant found himself wondering what it might be like to stand beside this remarkable woman, to help shape a more compassionate future for both their peoples. "First, I have to survive Varkas," he reminded her. "You will," she said with surprising certainty. "Because you must," she hesitated, then added, "There's something else you should know. The enzyme treatment you've been giving me. I've been having our loyal medical staff analyze it. We believe it could be adapted to treat not just me, but entire populations affected by similar toxins." Grant frowned. "What do you mean?" 17 worlds across the Empire's outer territories are currently experiencing outbreaks of a mysterious illness, one with symptoms remarkably similar to my own. Dr. Morvich dismissed the connection, but I believe it's the same toxin, deployed on a massive scale. "Biological warfare," Grant breathed, the implications staggering. "Kestra isn't just targeting you. She's destabilizing entire planetary populations." Liax nodded grimly. "If we can perfect your treatment, we could save millions of lives. But only if we retain the authority to deploy it empire-wide." Grant's resolve hardened. Suddenly, tomorrow's combat wasn't just about Liax's life or his people's safety. It was about millions of innocents across 17 worlds. "I'll find a way," he promised. Somehow. Before they parted for the night, Liax did something that would have shocked the imperial court to its foundations. She leaned forward and pressed her lips gently to Grant's, a kiss that bridged the vast gulf between their worlds. "For luck," she whispered, then disappeared into the palace depths, leaving Grant to contemplate a future he had never imagined possible. The Imperial Colosseum was a massive structure of gleaming metal and transparent crystal, open to the sky and surrounded by tiered seating that accommodated thousands of spectators. As Grant was led to the preparation chamber beneath the arena floor, he could hear the roar of the crowd above. The entire court had gathered to witness the trial of champions, and countless more watched via transmission across the Empire. Captain Thun helped him don the lightweight combat armor that had been provided, a concession to his human physiology, rather than the heavier protection Imperial warriors typically wore. "Remember what we practiced," Thien advised as he adjusted the final pieces. "Varkas will attack aggressively from the start. He'll expect you to retreat, to show fear. Surprise him with calm." Grant nodded, his mouth too dry for speech. He had spent the morning with Princess Liax, administering a final dose of the enzyme treatment before being taken to the Colosseum. She had been pale, but composed, her faith in him both touching and terrifying. "One last thing," Thien said, lowering his voice. "Varkas has a weakness, a gap in his armor at the right shoulder joint, a legacy of an old injury that never healed properly. He compensates well, but if you can strike there..." The guard, left the implication hanging. A thunderous chime sounded, signaling that the time had come. Thun handed Grant a real plasma blade, its weight and balance far superior to the practice weapon he had trained with. "May the spirits of your ancestors guide your arm," the four-eyed guard said formally. Then, stepped back as the platform beneath Grant's feet began to rise, carrying him up into the blinding light of the arena. The noise was overwhelming, thousands of voices raised in anticipation of bloodshed. Grant blinked against the harsh sunlight, taking in the vast circular space before him. Across the arena, another platform rose, bearing his opponent. Varkas was enormous, nearly 8 feet tall, his massive frame encased in ornate black armor, adorned with Princess Kestra's insignia. His helmet concealed his features, but the set of his shoulders and the confident grip on his weapon spoke volumes. This was a warrior who had never known defeat. From a hovering platform above the center of the arena, Emperor Valon raised his hands for silence. Gradually, the crowd's roar diminished to a tense hush. "Today we witness the trial of champions," the Emperor's voice boomed, amplified throughout the Colosseum. "Princess Leix, firstborn and rightful heir, has chosen her consort, Grant of New Terra, as her champion. Princess Kestra has chosen Varkas of the Imperial Guard as hers. Let combat commence, and may the true heir be revealed by victory." A single chime sounded, and Varkas charged immediately, his plasma blade leaving a trail of blue fire in its wake. Grant barely had time to raise his own weapon in defense, the impact of Varkas's blow sending shockwaves up his arms. The next minutes were a blur of desperate evasion. Grant's training with Thene proved invaluable as he ducked, rolled, and sidestepped Varkas's relentless attacks. But he knew he couldn't maintain this pace indefinitely. Already his lungs burned and his muscles protested each movement. Varkas seemed to sense his fatigue. "Surrender, Terran," the warrior growled, his voice distorted by his helmet. "I can make your death quick if you yield now." "Not happening," Grant gasped, narrowly avoiding a slash that would have bisected him. The crowd's mood shifted as the combat continued, their initial bloodlust giving way to something like grudging respect for the outmatched human who refused to fall. Grant used this, circling the arena, making Varkas pursue him in the growing heat of the day. The massive warrior's movements began to slow, his attacks becoming more predictable. Grant remembered Thun's words about Varkas's weakness. As his opponent launched another powerful overhead strike, Grant didn't retreat as expected. Instead, he stepped inside Varkas's guard, his plasma blade angled upward toward the right shoulder joint. Time seemed to slow. Grant saw Varkas's realization come too late. The warrior's attempt to adjust his stance foiled by his own momentum. The plasma blade slipped through the gap in the armor, finding the vulnerable flesh beneath. Varkas's roar of pain echoed throughout the Colosseum. His weapon clattered to the ground as his right arm hung useless at his side. Grant backed away, his blade still raised defensively, waiting for the warrior's next move. But there was none. Varkas sank to his knees, his left hand raised in the imperial gesture of surrender. The crowd erupted, some in cheers, others in outraged protests. Emperor Valon's voice cut through the chaos. "The trial is concluded. Victory belongs to Grant of New Terra, champion of Princess Leix." Before Grant could fully process what had happened, alarms began blaring throughout the Colosseum. Imperial guards rushed to form a protective circle around the Emperor's platform, weapons drawn. "Security breach," one shouted. "Multiple disturbances reported throughout the Imperial District." Captain Thene appeared at Grant's side, practically dragging him from the arena floor. "We must reach the princess immediately," he urged. Kestra would not accept defeat so easily. This was merely a diversion. They raced through the Colosseum's underground passages, emerging into chaos. The plaza outside was filled with running figures, some in imperial uniforms, others in civilian attire, all converging on the palace. "What's happening?" Grant demanded as they fought their way through the crowd. Civil conflict, Thine replied grimly. Kestra's supporters versus loyalists. The trial was meant to prevent this, but she must have planned for failure. When they finally reached the royal chambers, they found Princess Lex already mobilizing, issuing commands to loyal guards and officials despite her weakened condition. "Grant!" she exclaimed when she saw him, relief flooding her features. "You're alive!" "More than that, he won," Thine reported, defeated Varkas honorably in combat. But there was no time for celebration. A royal advisor rushed in, his robes disheveled. "Your Highness, we've received reports from the outer territories. All 17 affected worlds are experiencing coordinated uprisings. It's as if they were waiting for a signal." The signal was my defeat in the trial, Lex realized. Kestra expected me to lose, triggering her wider plan. Now she's improvising. "Where is she?" Grant asked. "Fled the planet," the advisor reported. "Her personal vessel broke orbit 20 minutes ago, headed for the Centauri sector, where the outbreaks began." Lex's expression hardened with resolve. "We need to address the Grand Council immediately. If we can demonstrate the connection between Kestra's actions and the planetary outbreaks, we can unify the Empire against her. And we need to mass-produce the enzyme treatment," Grant added. "If these worlds are suffering from the same toxin that's affecting you, we can save them." Within hours, they stood before the Grand Council, representatives of the Empire's 17 major dynasties, gathered in an emergency session. Emperor Valon presented the evidence of Kestra's treachery, while Grant and Lex explained the nature of the alkaloid toxin and the treatment they had developed. To demonstrate the efficacy of their cure, a volunteer from one of the affected worlds was brought forward, his symptoms identical to those Lex had experienced. Grant administered the enzyme extract, and the assembled counselors watched in amazement as the man's tremors visibly subsided within minutes. "This treatment can be mass-produced using relatively simple botanical techniques," Grant explained. "We can distribute it to all affected worlds within days." "And what would you ask in return, Terran?" one counselor demanded suspiciously. Grant exchanged a glance with Lex before answering. "Two things. First, amnesty for the colonists of New Terra and any other human settlements that have resisted imperial rule. Second, a commitment to reform, to create an empire that nurtures rather than exploits, that grows rather than merely conquers." The council chamber erupted in debate. Some members outraged at the audacity of Grant's demands, others intrigued by the possibility of a new direction for the aging empire. Emperor Valon raised his hand for silence. "My daughter has chosen this man as her consort," he reminded them. "By ancient law, and by combat, he has earned the right to stand beside her as she eventually takes the throne. His voice will be heard." In the days that followed, events moved with dizzying speed. Kestra's forces were isolated and eventually defeated as worlds across the Empire rallied behind Emperor Valon and Princess Lex. Dr. Morvich was captured attempting to flee to the outer territories and imprisoned for his role in the conspiracy. The enzyme treatment was distributed to all affected worlds, saving countless lives. As the crisis abated, Grant found himself thrust into an unexpected role, not just as royal consort-to-be, but as the architect of a new imperial initiative, the Earth Gardens Project. Massive biodomes were constructed on each imperial world, dedicated to cultivating earth plants and teaching imperial citizens the fundamentals of sustainable agriculture. The colonists of New Terra were freed and offered the choice of returning to their rebuilt world or remaining within the empire as honored citizens. Many chose to stay, taking positions as instructors in the new Earth Gardens. 6 months after the Trial of Champions, in a ceremony that was broadcast throughout the empire, Grant and Lex were formally joined according to both imperial tradition and Earth custom. The once dying princess, now fully recovered thanks to Grant's treatment, stood tall and radiant beside her human consort, their union symbolizing a new era of cooperation between worlds. "Did you ever imagine this outcome when you were first brought before my father?" Lex asked quietly, as they stood on the palace balcony that evening, watching the twin moons rise over the imperial capital. Grant smiled, taking her hand in his. "I was just trying to stay alive and save my people. I never expected any of this. And now you're professor of botanical sciences to the imperial court and royal consort to the future empress," she teased gently. "Quite a promotion for a new Terra farmer." "The work is what matters," Grant replied, looking out over the sprawling city below, where the first Earth Garden open to the public had recently been completed. Teaching people to grow things, to nurture life instead of just consuming it. That's a legacy worth building. Leax leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. "Our legacy," she corrected. "Together." As night fell over the imperial capital, lights began to glow in windows across the city, not the harsh blue illumination of traditional imperial technology, but the warm, golden light of Earth-style lamps that Grant had introduced. It was a small change, symbolic of the larger transformation taking place across the Empire, a blending of worlds, of technologies, of philosophies. A new era was beginning, sprouting from the most unlikely of seeds. A prisoner who knew how to make things grow, and a princess who dared to envision a different kind of empire.